Welcome back guys on my YouTube channel. I'm here to do, I think, an interesting and useful video for many of you that need to decide if to buy the Yamaha WR450F or the Fantic XEF450. Apparently, they are almost the same bike since they share the same Yamaha frame and the engine, because Fantic uses the frame, casing and full engine from the Yamaha. Even the suspension is the same. But other than the color, the differences are quite many, and this translates also in the riding feeling that is very different. So if you haven't seen it, I've done a video review here on my channel of the Fantic when I had the chance to test it, but I also took part of the development of some components for this bike. Other than this, a quick notice, there was quite a lot of dust here in the workshop, so I gathered it up and I placed it here on my shirt, so don't worry if you see something strange on my shirt. I'm actually trying out the new DJI wireless microphones, but now let's move on to the interesting part. To start with, the most evident difference is the color and the plastic. The design of the plastic is completely different. The headlight is different. Other than changing the color and the design, there's actually also some different functionality. If we start looking at the right-hand side number plate, the Yamaha WR one gives you the chance to change the oil of the rear brake pump without the need of removing the plastic, because you can remove the cap directly. Whereas on the Fantic, there is on one side an advantage because we have an added protection, but the side number plate goes and covers the rear brake reservoir. This adds protection. We won't have much dirt going on it, but it means we'll have to remove the plastic in order to change the brake fluid. For sure, the biggest difference between these two bikes in Europe, I don't know how's the situation in the US or in Australia or in South Africa, but the biggest difference is that in Europe, the WR is not homologated. It means if you go buy it, you can't get it registered. You know, I'm Italian, so I managed to get these registered, but it's a bit tricky and it's about 1,000 euro cost to get the homologation made. Whereas the Fantic, once you purchase it, you can go directly and get your license plate and use it for any activity you want on road. The WR, you'll need to find this Italian way to get it homologated, but I know also in, I think, Portugal and Spain, they managed to homologate these. Always concerning the plastics, even the decals are different between one bike and the other. And I'm not speaking about the design, but about the fact that the WR has the graphic printed inside the radiator shroud, whereas the Fantic has a full set of decals that are on the radiator shrouds, on the front fender, on the side number plates, and on the lower part of the tank. Having a sticker kit like this made in crystal for sure adds protection to your plastic, so it's gonna be more difficult to get them scratched, and in case you want to change the graphics after a while, you know, you'll have a plain nice surface. Whereas on the WR, these will wear out, and probably you want to get a full sticker kit before you go use the bike. Other details that are different are the grips. The Yamaha has black grips and the Fantic has domino black and red grips. The design is a bit different, and I can tell you from my experience testing both bikes that you have a bit more grip with the Fantic domino grips, especially in case of mud. You will surely prefer the Fantic grips, but that, you know, is something that easily gets changed, because first crash you do, you rip the hand grip and you change them. But then an important difference comes from the seat, not by the seat itself, but on the seat cover. The Yamaha seat cover is much less aggressive compared to the Fantic seat cover. Also, it features double material and has different material on the side that it's a bit more resistant than the one on the top. Whereas the Fantic has this pyramid material, which is super aggressive. Depends on what you need to do, if this is better or the Yamaha seat is better. This surely provides a better grip, especially in mud. You'll have your bottom, your ass sticking to the seat and not sliding backwards. But the downside is if you're buying one of these two bikes to do long rides, like being on the bike 6-7 hours using it for adventure riding. Your ass will hurt a bit after a while on this, and the Yamaha one is more comfortable. Personally, if I have to race the bike, I prefer, for example, on the motocross track, like I did during the test, I prefer the Fantic seat, also because here you have the humps like on, you know, the Rebel X Sports seat covers that you usually see on the rally bikes. This adds even more grip to it, but as I mentioned, it's really aggressive. But now let's speak about the biggest difference between the two bikes that comes from the engine power side. You can really feel testing the two bikes that they ride and handle two completely different bikes. The reason for this is of several components that Fantic placed on the bike, which is the full Arrow exhaust. This is not only the muffler, but the full exhaust, where on the WR, it has the standard WR model, which is much more tapped and restricted compared to the Arrow one, even though when you buy the bike, you'll get the bike delivered with all the restrictions that you'll need to remove. This happens on the WR and on the Fantic. But once you remove all the restrictions, this full exhaust gives a different power response combined with the ECU, because the Fantic features the Get ECU. So a really big work was done on the development of the ECU maps, giving the bike a much more responsive feeling. Meaning when we are in the forest and we are doing some pretty technical trail riding, we'll see that the Fantic, when we need to overcome an obstacle, is more ready at the bottom end. And if you try it on a motocross track or, you know, on an enduro race, you'll feel it like it's a more race bike compared to the WR that feels more a smooth bike, an easier bike to handle. It gets you less tired than this. I know now you're wondering, should I go for the WR or for the Fantic? Personally, I have mixed feelings because when I was riding, I enjoyed more the WR. The reason for which was I felt I could handle better the power. It being smoother and more gentle on dry conditions or on wet conditions, it's easier to manage compared to the Fantic, where if I went in sand and that type of terrain that has a lot of grip, this is definitely more fun. If I personally had to choose, I would choose the WR, also because the other reason is that on the WR you can put an aftermarket Get ECU with traction control, whereas you can't do it on the Fantic. On the Fantic, you're obligated to keep the OEM ECU, which is produced by Get, but you can't add certain accessories like the GPA controller at the moment. I don't know if Fantic has in plans of doing it in the future, but to this day, you can tweak more the WR. And this is what we are gonna do, because I have these two bikes for development purposes, and I'll work on both of them, turning them in rally adventure bikes. It will take me a while, but I'm really excited on this project. Other details that personally I like a lot is the exhaust protector. This is a carbon exhaust protector. You have it on both sides, whereas on the WR you have a steel metal protector. I prefer this because it dissipates better the heat when, you know, you're in high temperatures, and I think it looks a bit more factory. I don't know if this is actually carbon or a plastic covered with carbon. I would need to chop it and see and take it off, but I think this looks better. Furthermore, on the clutch cover is identical, but clearly the Fantic one doesn't have the Yamaha logo, and that's another minor difference. Moving forward, the rims have a different color. If you like, the Fantic has the black rim, this has the blue rim. That's up to you. I think that lots of people will decide on which bike to go, more on an aesthetic idea, even though if you bought a WR and you wanted to put the Fantic plastics on, you can do that. And vice versa. If you buy a Fantic because it has the homologation here in Europe and you want to turn it in a WR, just buy a full set of plastics and you'll be able to fit them here. Speaking now about lights and headlights, the rear fender light on the WR comes without license plate holder, whereas the Fantic one comes with a license placeholder. But on the front, I haven't had the chance to test how much light they make at night. Usually I don't ride at night, or if I ride at night, I add some light like the Baja Design Squadron. From an aesthetic point of view, I think there is no discussion which looks nicer. The Yamaha WR is just way nicer than the design of the Fantic. This is personal preference, but I feel that this is a sleeker and sharper look compared to the Fantic one. If you want to change and keep the Fantic plastics but go for a cooler headlight, you can get the WR1, which is available also in white, and you can place it here. You'll need probably to change also the front fender. You can get the Yamaha YZ or WR in white and change the look of the bike. A minor difference, but that to me is important and a bit annoying, is the difference in the bike stand. The Fantic has a bike stand that when you pull it out, it immediately flips back up. You really need to be careful when you're placing the bike that's fully open. I'll quickly show you how easily it closes down, and I'll show you the WR1 where once you open it, it stays open, and I prefer it much more. Here on the Fantic, you see this black plastic. It's just a restrictor that you don't find on the Yamaha WR. Clearly, there are some restrictions more to remove on the Fantic, so you have a bit more work, but you can ask the dealership to remove all the restrictions. Like even on the back wheel, you can see there is that key with that bracket, all stuff that you'll remove. Lastly, we have a different dashboard for the kilometers, the speed, and all that information. I don't have it installed on the WR, so I'll show you a photo because I was developing some new ECU maps on that. This is different. Usually I remove them, especially when I do rally bike builds, but we'll see. I'll try and make a bracket or something so that if you wanna keep it, you can keep it. Moving on, then we have different tires on the bikes. We have Metzler tires on the Fantic and Dunlop tires on the Yamaha WR450. Which ones I prefer are the Dunlop. I don't know, when I was riding, I feel they have a better grip, they're a bit softer. Downside is clearly you wear it out much quicker than the Metzler, so if you're doing a lot of rocky enduro, probably the Metzler will last you more. But we all know once we buy a new bike, we'll end up after a few rides changing the tires with our preferred tire. Something that is very similar on both but is different is the app to connect to the ECU, because on the WR, through the Yamaha app, you can go inside and tweak the map to a certain level where you're not taking risks of damaging the bike. Same goes with the Get ECU on the Fantic, where you can connect through the app, both available for Android and on the Apple Store. And same like for the WR, you can tweak in a slightly different way the maps so that you can modify it to your needs. If you want the bike to be a bit smoother, if you change maybe exhaust and the bike is a bit lean and you need to add some fuel, you can do it with both. To end with one of the difference I know you're the most interested in is the money. There's a different price. The WR450F comes out in Italy for a price of 8,999 euros. Whereas the Fantic comes out at a price of 10,990 euro. So you have a 2,000 euro gap between one bike and the other. If you want to get the WR homologated, you'll spend at least 1,000 euros. So that closes the gap. Is the 2,000 euro gap between the Yamaha WR450 and the Fantic XEF450 really justified? My answer is yes, because if we consider on the Fantic we have a full arrow exhaust, only that is worth over 1,000 euros. You have the seat cover that's worth about 100 euros, a bit more than 100 euros. You have different details like the ECU with the multiple maps that's also present on the WR, but there has been a further development on the Fantic. This makes the justification of the 2,000 euros real if we also consider the fact that it's homologated and you would need to spend 1,000 euros to homologate the WR. So if we add up everything, it's actually over 2,000 euros difference if we had to buy the parts alone. Which one I prefer and which one would I recommend? First of all, depends what you want to do. If you want to do enduro races here in Europe where they're very technical, I would go with the Fantic. I think it's a more enduro-oriented setup, with the seat, with the ECU and the exhaust. Whereas if you want a more dual sport bike, and a bike more for it to be easy to ride and enjoy, I would go with the WR because it has a much smoother engine. I love the full blue design. The seat is a bit more comfortable, but as I mentioned before, if you want to swap, if you want to buy this and put the looks and all the accessories of the Fantic on it or vice versa, you can do it. So if you want to buy the Fantic and make it smoother, you can start installing the OEM Yamaha exhaust, slightly tweak the map on the YGET application, change the seat cover. But let me know in the comments down below if this video was useful for you to understand which are the main differences between the bikes, which one you would opt for and prefer, whereas I'll see you in the next video with probably coming up some new rally adventure bike builds. So stay tuned, follow me on Instagram, and I'll see you soon. Ciao!